If we go to the book of Job, it was in chapter 10 where Job is challenged, and it wasn't until chapter 42 that God broke through. That he had to go from chapter 10 to chapter 42 before God broke through. But nowhere in that whole journey did he deny God.
That's right. And in Acts chapter 5, I think something that you wanted to share, didn't you, about persecution. You touched on it.
Yeah.
You realize that in the life of these apostles who were great witnesses, great evangelists, they did amazing miracles. They went around doing amazing things. They weren't driving around in BMWs and designer suits. But they were in prison. They were flogged. Yeah. They were thrown off ships. They went without food. Yeah. They were they were thrown overboard and they were floating in the sea. Ask the question. Persecution.
And how different to the world's view of evangelism, that we have the private jet and all of that going along. Actually, it's in the prison, it's in those places where we will find. And many people say to me, why me? I became a Christian and I'm so faithful to God, why am I going through this? Always remember, God sent his son. God sent his son. And his son went through enormous pain. Enormous hardship. One thing I love to share with people is the fact that we say, I have this really good feeling about this. And we say, it must be of God. No. Let's be awake to the fact that when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, look, God, Father, take this cup from me. He sweated blood. He wasn't in a peaceful, lovely, cozy place. But he was in the right place. And we have to remember and get real. If God is taking us through something, one of the sermons I've heard most in my Christian life is the potter and the clay. And I've heard so many versions of this. But, when we talk about the clay and God manufacturing this pot, if it starts to go wobbly, he'll fold it up and he'll put it back. And it's painful. And so when we walk about in this namby-pamby way saying, oh Lord, why me? Oh Lord. And I'm speaking to me now. In this new church I've been in, we've had some difficulties. And I'm saying, why Lord? It was much easier on the streets. But God's trying to teach me a lesson. And he'll take you through it, Going back to my horticulture, I remember when I started work on a 56-acre estate, wonderful estate, and thought, this was the job of all jobs, amazing. I was incredibly amazed that I got the job with my lack of qualifications. And 2 months into it, we had the October storm, and it blew half of the woodlands down. And everybody was, oh, how awful is this? It's dreadful, it's disastrous. And yet, if you talk to anybody that went through that time, the beauty and the splendour that came out after the trees went down. Bluebells came where they'd not seen. Foxgloves came where they hadn't been seen. Saplings came. Because God has to sometimes wipe us through and bring us back to that place.
Well, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies.
Yeah.
You know all about that.
Yeah,
we should have a Alan Titchmarsh kind of show.
Yeah, we should, yeah.
All the plants and all the... Anyway, get carried away there.
We better pray for Alan.
Absolutely. But I get very excited. Because I think there's nothing more incredible and so joyful than to see someone transformed.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And we all are transformed people, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
God is still transforming us. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
We as God is still working on us. Digging up the ground and digging deeper and putting us through, cutting and pruning, and it doesn't look very pretty.
No.
I remember once somebody visited, a gardener visited at my mum's place, and my mum she likes her roses, and she had these roses in front of the garden, and she said, can you help me? Can you tell us what is wrong with this rose? He said, well, give me a succateur. He just went. Yeah. And she said she was horrified. Yeah. She said, what have you done? And he said, well, you'll see.
You'll see.
And I think there's a bit of that. We don't like to come under the sword of the Spirit.
Absolutely.
It's a cutting thing. Yeah. Now we're saying a lot of things, and you're a pastor now.
Yeah.
And just give us some ideas as to how do you make the church not inward looking but outward looking. Some of the things that maybe people are watching us, maybe a pastor is watching. How can you make a church outward looking? What are some of the tools, if you like, that you've used to make your church?
I suppose to answer that question is quite difficult because I'm only sort of 9 months into pastoring the church, and we're seeing some outward signs. I do think that encouragement is obviously the key to everything. One of the reasons I believe this church called me to be their pastor is because they saw something real about me. I call a spade a spade. I am a very real person, and I hope that comes over today.
Sorry, John, you can call a spade because you're a gardener.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And but it's just kind of getting people to understand. You know, if you've got a passion in your heart, it got there somehow. And I have a passion in my heart to share the gospel. But if you don't have that, you need to find that. You know, some people have said to me, "Well, I don't get it. I'm not in that place." Well, ask for it. You know, God wants to give us every good gift, you know, and I don't know where this church will go. I don't know what the big plan is. I believe God's going to do something amazing through this tiny little chapel there in Forest Row. I believe that's going to happen, and that's why we're going through the testing and the pruning and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you have to, if you're passionate about something, it'll rub off on people. I believe they'll get excited. Initially it becomes an irritant, but eventually they'll get it. And I think it's through testimony, I think it's getting people into that place. You know, if you've got a praying people, then you've got a doing people. You know, once you get into that place of prayer and petition, and then you start to see the small things happen, I mean, it's incredible. One of the great testimonies in the village of Forest Row is the Anglican vicar, Nick, a great friend of mine, whose wife had been struggling for 20 years with ME. And suddenly she's had this miracle healing. And from this woman that for these many years that he's had to wheelchair around, is suddenly she's just done a sponsored bike ride. And he said it's like having a new woman and we need to be sharing this stuff. You know, if we start to expect, we will see God move. If we don't start, and we start to share that, you know, through testimony, etc. When we start to share the good things that God's doing, then we'll see more and more.
We have a caller on the line, Katrina? No.
No. Okay.
Well, again, you know, people want to ring in and talk to us.
Yeah, we do.
Which is really good. So we are rapidly coming to the end of the program.
Are we indeed?
We are hurtling towards it. So, okay, we have a caller. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay, thanks.
What's your name? Could you tell us your name?
Jill.
Jill. Hi, Jill.
Hi. Actually, I'm so riveted by this programme.
Riveted, did you say?
That's how I felt this morning. For 12 years, my husband and I have, in Rochester, been doing evangelistic work on the street.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we've had such a tidal wave of stuff come at us.
Amen.
And I, this morning, was in that place of, I just don't know what's going on. I've had a marriage in the family go wrong. I've had my son that has got to go into Grinstead for corneal transplant.
Oh.
My other family are in London, and son's out of work, and many other things have come up. And now I'm ill, and I feel drained, and I think to myself, how can we go back out on the streets?
Right.
You know, I just feel so drained, and that enthusiasm that we had has just gone.
It will come.
It will come.
Jill, never forget. It will come.
It's a season.
Yes, I feel so frustrated. So.
Yeah. Okay, Jill, well, I hope you've been watching the program, and we had other callers with similar issues, and John was able to encourage them, and I'm sure he will say the same thing again. Thank you very much for your call. We're coming rapidly to the end of I will get John to speak to you. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Bless you.
Yeah, I do. I just want to say, you know, we can't belittle some of these problems that we go through, and some of them really do test our faith. And we go back to Job, which is, you know, a good place for us to understand some of what Job went through. But I always believe, you know, one of the things we have to really stand on is that when we come under really severe attack, it means God's going to break through. You know,